What's up, nerd and nerdettes? It's time for a Superpower Shorty. This superpower is a splinter off the branch of darkness manipulation. So sit down and get set for shadow manipulation. With the ability to hide intentions, emphasize drama, and entertain children and adults of all ages, users of Umbrakinesis can create, shape, and manipulate shadows. Umbra literally meaning shade, shadow, or darkness. Now, before you guys get started, yes, in reality, there's no difference between shadows and actual darkness. And when you bring this up, when talking to anyone, you're almost guaranteed to run into the metaphorical chicken and egg argument of all shadows being darkness, but not all forms of darkness are shadows. But if we were to try and establish a level of differentiation on this, I would say that shadows are a form of darkness that can only exist in or through a source of light, while actual darkness itself exists because there's an absence of light. So, does that make the shadow the unnoticed love child of darkness and light? Or does that make the shadow a more personalized form of darkness that we can comprehend and quantify? Once again, you guys can decide that. Just like you guys can decide what kind of silhouette you want to cast over this channel. How does one do that? Well, easy, by hitting that like and subscribe button. Overcast is a woohoo! But let's all work together and get the sun out, or at least a match. Wait, that won't work because that'll still cause shadow. Quick, turn over the lights! Turn over the... Officially speaking, a shadow is a dark area where light from a light source is blocked by an object with a level of opaqueness, meaning it's not transparent. So basically, if a form of light exists, most objects are going to cast a shadow. And that shadow's position is usually an inversion of the original form, normally seen behind the subject, or at least opposite of the light source. And just like its parent superpower, darkness manipulation, trying to understand it scientifically is, well, something that's a pain in the woo-hoo. But it's a lot easier than pure darkness because of its ability to be contrasted against light. So way before the mainstream clocks and watches and, time stops and, clock towers, I guess, sundials were the earliest type of timekeeping device that used a carved object or shape, the position of the sun, and the length of the shadow cast by the object to tell the passage of time. Pretty creative if I say so myself. But shadows have also had an esoteric and metaphysical meaning throughout human history as well, as the shadow of a particular being was thought to have been linked to the soul, or the true essence of a person. Where the eyes can be fooled through various forms of trickery and dark arts, the shadow casted by the light showed what you were truly hiding. This ties into the metaphorical and symbolic meanings of other powers such as light manipulation, which I've done a video on, and long story short, the illumination and enlightening aspect of light will cast away the darkness and only leave the shadow of what's attached to the person. This is why popular culture shows us shadows cast on walls with no caster nearby as a sign of a soul, in whatever unseeable form it takes. This also ties into more modern-ish discoveries that tie into the mental aspect of an individual. More importantly, the focus on the subconscious, or the shadow thoughts. Now, these are thoughts that rarely reach the surface level of our thinking day to day, when we're conscious, but are still very much a part of our mind. Media and popular culture normally portray this type of internal or external thematic tension by showing the character or characters going through their own 50 Shades of Shey. But a more widely accepted term for this would be chiaroscuro, which is the treatment of light and shadow in drawings and paintings. This art technique has led to various tropes still used in the modern day, such as the hidden eye trope, which can get confused for the sunken eye trope. Those two are very similar. The creepy shadowed under eyes, which in the wrong light can get confused for eyeliner. The face framed in shadow trope, the sexy silhouette trope, or the extremely unnerving, scary flashlight face. Yeah, this power is the perfect example for explaining my point on how and why concept-based superpowers like this and the numerous others I've covered before exist, and how the concept of them existing has affected every form of culture imaginable, and, in a weird inverse, how the ideas from these individual cultures and their way of life shaped how we view the power in the modern day. That's some freaky stuff. I find stuff like this funny. The main theme behind these tropes is not only do the shadows exist and they're obscuring things, the shadows themselves are positioned on the wrong parts of the face, which distorts our sense of familiarity and, most importantly, sight. You can't forget about that. This also translates to a form of censorship, as popular culture will portray controversial and/or horrific scenes of assault, torture, or death. Heck, they might even show off-screen shrieks of pain or gut-wrenching sounds through the casting of shadows on a nearby surface, like a wall, maybe even the floor, or by adding unnatural shadows to the subject, which will add to the horror and/or mystery of the unknown. Popular culture has referred to these as shadow discretion shots. Following that up, this is why we call someone or something that follows, tracks, or tails, whatever word you want to use, someone or something, a shadow. Or why we call someone who, through reasons either known or not, who isn't acting like their normal selves, or how we expect them to act based on how we know them, we call them a shadow of their former self. The typical way to portray this ability and separate it from users of darkness manipulation is by focusing on the main fact that shadows are cast on surfaces, which is why, even though this ability can be overpowered when portrayed, it's normally portrayed with the limitation of having to remain in contact with the shadow's caster, or on the surface that they were cast upon, while keeping in mind that shadows cannot exist in total darkness or total light. Absolute light? Anyway, so unfortunately, just like darkness manipulation, this power is normally given a sinister or anti-heroic property to it because we humans associate darkness itself with evil, or at least something sinister. So, if you want more information on how shadows are just another form of darkness, because they are, check out my video on darkness manipulation. You'll get to hear my self-analysis of what the power really means and how has it affected world culture and popular culture as a whole. The link is in the description. Now I'm going to switch this up a bit because, like I mentioned earlier, and numerous times before that, shadows are just a type of darkness. So I'll mainly be focusing on the special properties of shadows. Let's see where this goes. Now, with the power to manipulate shadows comes the natural ability to attack with, defend with, and control shadows with shadow attacks. The user can manipulate outside objects in a push or pull manner with a form of Umbra telekinesis. More shadow-based than darkness-based, but same thing. They are able to bypass the intangible nature of shadows and interact with it as if it was solid, whether they can control it or not, with shadow interaction. And since you're going through the trouble of interacting with it, why not shape it to your liking with forms both simple and complex with Umbrakinetic constructs? And since you can control the shadow and give the shade a definite shape, you might as well give it a personality of its own before it develops one for itself and goes rogue with animated shadow. The user can create their own source of shadows completely separate from outside sources with shadow generation. And since you can generate it, why shouldn't you be able to take it in whatever manner you choose with shadow absorption? At this level, it's pretty safe to say that you're pretty familiar with shadows, right? Right? So upon desire or focus, one should be able to control shadows belonging to other beings with individual shadow manipulation. Remember what I said about shadows and their relation to the ethereal, aka the soul of an individual? That right there opens the door for numerous other powers, such as shadow marionette, which allows you to control the shadow of an individual and, as a byproduct, control them. Shadow pinning allows the user to immobilize a target by pinning their shadow to a surface. And shadow binding allows you to bind a target with their own projected shade. And the very overpowered shadow mutilation, oh my God, allows you to ignore the person and focus completely on attacking their shadow, only for the target to realize too late that the damage can and does transfer over. Here's something that I never even considered, but it's pretty dang on cool. Users at this level would be able to transform their own self-casted darkness into other tangible forms, essentially creating something from the absence of light with shadow conversion. Extremely overpowered. And since you can turn shadows into objects, simply figure out a way to reverse that process and you can hide within the shadows with shadow stealth. I'm pretty sure that one's just the same as shadow camouflage from darkness manipulation, but it's the same thing, it doesn't matter. Like stated earlier and in previous videos, that's not all the applications or associations. If you want more uses for this power, check out my video on darkness manipulation. All you gotta do is replace the word dark with shadow, and you can definitely accomplish the same things, like the exact same things. Won't even have to change the visuals because, say it with me guys, oh, well that's rude.